Welcome back to the ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel. Today we will learn about the dramatic twists unfolding in Port Charles for Wednesday, October 22nd, where secrets unravel, apologies surface, and family tensions reach new boiling points. In a moment of candid vulnerability, Jordan Ashford shares a deeply personal revelation with her longtime confidante, Anna Devane, during what was supposed to be a relaxing afternoon of catching up over coffee at a quiet cafe overlooking the harbor. Instead of delving into the shadowy world of covert operations or criminal schemes that once defined their partnership, Jordan's disclosure hits much closer to home, exposing a web of deception within her own fractured family circle. She confides that Portia Robinson Ashford has been withholding a life-altering truth from her husband, Curtis Ashford, one that could shatter their already fragile reconciliation. Portia is expecting a child, but the paternity remains shrouded in uncertainty, leaving her paralyzed by fear and guilt. This confession stirs haunting echoes from their shared past, transporting Jordan and Anna back to their intense days in the DEA, when they navigated high-stakes missions alongside the enigmatic Marcus Taggart, a fellow agent whose charisma masked his own personal turmoil. During that era, Portia was grappling with her unexpected pregnancy with their daughter, Trina Robinson, a time marked by clandestine meetings in dimly lit safe houses, whispered suspicions about loyalties, and the constant adrenaline of undercover work that blurred lines between professional duty and private lives. Jordan recalls how Portia's secrecy then nearly derailed a critical operation, forcing the team to improvise under pressure, and she fears history is repeating itself in even more explosive ways now, with Curtis's recovery from his accident adding layers of emotional complexity that Portia seems unwilling or unable to confront head-on. Meanwhile, across town at the opulent Quartermaine mansion, the elegant tea gathering hosted by the ever-gracious but meddlesome socialites turns chaotic as Portia abruptly excuses herself, her face flushed with a mix of nausea and rising fury, storming through the grand foyer toward the exit. In a heated exchange captured by onlookers, she lashes out at the inquisitive Nellie Benson, a persistent gossip from the nurses' station at General Hospital known for her penchant for prying into colleagues' affairs during shift breaks, snapping, "Stay out of my business before I make you regret it." This outburst likely stems from an earlier private clash with Jordan in the mansion's sunlit conservatory, where Jordan, ever the perceptive investigator, noticed Portia's pallor and subtle signs of morning sickness, piecing together the pregnancy puzzle and pressing for answers that Portia deflected with sharp denials. The Quartermaine estate, buzzing with relatives and guests mingling over delicate china cups and fresh scones, provided little privacy, and it's entirely possible that fragments of their tense conversation drifted into the ears of others, perhaps a curious caterer or a lingering family member, who then innocently probed Portia for clarification, igniting her defensive rage. Adding to the intrigue, Portia's internal dilemma deepens as she wrestles with memories of past indiscretions, including a fleeting encounter during Curtis's hospitalization that complicates her loyalties, forcing her to question not just the baby's father but her own capacity for honesty in a marriage already strained by secrets and betrayals from their early days together. Shifting scenes to the cozy ambience of Bobby's Diner, where the scent of fresh pies and brewing coffee offers a comforting backdrop, Kai Taylor sits across from Curtis Ashford, his expression heavy with remorse as he initiates a long-overdue conversation that could redefine their budding friendship. Kai, still adjusting to life after his debilitating injury, leans forward and admits, "Curtis, I need to make this right. I owe you a sincere apology for the choices I've made lately." The regret appears tied to his ill-fated decision to align himself professionally with Drew Cain, the ambitious congressman whose warnings from Curtis and mutual acquaintances like Marshall Ashford fell on deaf ears, luring Kai with promises of opportunity amid his post-surgery vulnerabilities. Unbeknownst to Curtis, who sips his black coffee thoughtfully, Kai played a pivotal role in the disappearance of compromising leverage Drew once held over Curtis and Portia, a dossier of sensitive financial records and personal correspondences that Kai and Trina painstakingly destroyed in a bonfire during their daring escape from Drew's lakeside residence on the chaotic night of the congressman's shooting. That evening, under a stormy sky with rain pelting the windows, Kai had second-guessed his alliance even as Drew's payments funded his experimental surgery, which restored his mobility enough to navigate the diner without a cane but dashed his dreams of returning to the football field where he once shone as a star quarterback. Now, haunted by Drew's manipulative tactics exposed in the aftermath, Kai contemplates revealing more about the night's events, including how he shielded Trina from potential danger, potentially forging a stronger bond with Curtis but risking the fragile trust they've built through shared recovery stories at physical therapy sessions. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit corner booth at the Floating Rib, Trina Robinson and her close friend Jerry Jax share an intimate exchange, their voices low amid the clink of glasses and murmur of patrons, as Trina unloads the emotional weight of her family's unraveling dynamics. With tears welling in her eyes, Trina confides, "Joss, it's like everything I thought was solid is just crumbling. My parents' marriage feels beyond repair, and I hate feeling so powerless in the middle of it all." Though unaware of the full scope of her mother's predicament, the shocking possibility of a new sibling with ambiguous paternity, Trina pieces together the mounting arguments and Curtis's growing distance, speculating that unresolved resentments from his accident and Portia's demanding career at the hospital are the culprits. Jocelyn, drawing from her own experiences with family upheavals involving her mother Carly's romantic entanglements, offers empathetic nods and suggests, sometimes, one honest conversation could shift the tide, but only if they're both willing to face the truth. Trina muses about intervening, perhaps organizing a family dinner reminiscent of happier times when they picnicked at the park with Marcus Taggart's stories lighting up the afternoon, but she holds back, fearing her input might exacerbate the divide. If she uncovered Portia's secret affair and its consequences, it would undoubtedly shatter her idealistic view of her parents' bond, prompting a confrontation that echoes the fiery tempers she's inherited from both sides. In a more subdued setting at the Jones family home, cousins Lucas Jones and Lulu Spencer convene for what starts as a casual check-in but quickly evolves into a heated debate over the ripple effects of recent violence in Port Charles, centering on the attempted assassination of Drew Kane that has left the community on edge. Lulu, fresh from eavesdropping on a tense discussion between her ex-husband Dante Falconeri and Michael Corinthos at the police station, relays details about Willow Tate's swift arraignment and transfer to the foreboding walls of Pentonville Prison, her voice laced with sympathy for the young mother's plight. Lucas, who collaborates with Willow on patient care initiatives at General Hospital and has witnessed her dedication firsthand during late-night shifts in the oncology ward, counters with caution, warning, "Lulu, getting involved could mean aiding someone who's truly culpable. We have to think about the evidence and the bigger picture." Lulu's compassion stems from her own history of legal entanglements and the heartbreak of seeing Michael and Willow's children, Wiley and Amelia, shuttled between relatives without their mother's steady presence, prompting her to brainstorm ways to advocate for a fair trial, perhaps by rallying support from community figures like Felicia Scorpio. Lucas, ever the pragmatic doctor shaped by his own past losses including the presumed death of his partner Brad Cooper, urges restraint, highlighting the potential conflicts of interest in the case that mirror broader Quartermaine family loyalties, all while the cousins sift through news clippings of the shooting, uncovering subtle connections to corporate rivalries that Drew's political rise has intensified. At Alexis Davis's law office, bathed in the warm glow of afternoon sunlight filtering through legal tomes, Drew Kane stands resolute before the no-nonsense attorney, presenting a proposition that hangs in the air like a high-stakes negotiation at a boardroom table. With Willow desperately in need of representation following Martin Gray's recusal due to his commitment to Drew's defense, a clear ethical clash, Drew leans in and states, "Alexis, this is a limited-time deal. Take Willow's case, and I'll lift those restraining orders keeping Scout from her extended family, starting with visits to the Quartermaine estate." Alexis, her brow furrowed in skepticism honed from years of navigating Port Charles's tangled webs of power and privilege, initially balks at the arrangement, citing her overflowing docket and the moral quandaries of bargaining with a client under scrutiny for the shooting. Yet Drew presses on, invoking the urgency of Willow's isolation in Pentonville's Stark cells, where she's cut off from breastfeeding her infant daughter and the support of loved ones, and reveals glimpses of his own investigation into the night's events, anonymous tips suggesting a hired gun tied to ELQ corporate espionage, that could exonerate Willow if pursued aggressively. As the clock ticks toward court deadlines, Drew's final ultimatum underscores his transformation from opportunistic politician to protective family man, willing to leverage his congressional influence for personal justice, though Alexis ponders the long-term fallout on her reputation and the Davis family ties to the Corinthoses. Finally, returning to the Quartermaine mansion's lavish drawing room, where crystal decanters gleam under chandelier light, the simmering rivalry between Tracy Quartermaine and the brash Ronnie Bard erupts into a spectacle that draws stunned reactions from bystanders, including a wide-eyed Brooke Lynn Quartermaine chase hovering near the doorway. Tracy, her wit sharpened like a stiletto, had earlier jabbed at Ronnie's evident inebriation during the tea service, noting how his slurred anecdotes about old Metro Court escapades betrayed a reliance on liquid courage to mask insecurities from his days as a scheming enforcer. Ronnie, fueled by the sting of rejection and a few too many refills from the punch bowl, retaliates with crude barbs, labeling Tracy as a cold fish who's traded passion for pedigree, escalating the verbal sparring into accusations of meddling in family businesses and sabotage deals dating back to the 1980s when Tracy's cutthroat tactics clashed with Ronnie's underworld connections. In a climactic flourish, Tracy seizes a nearby vase of ornamental liquid, perhaps a decorative floral essence or leftover cocktail mixer, and hurls it toward Ronnie, the splash narrowly missing his tailored suit as he dodges with a theatrical stagger, prompting Brooke Lynn to intervene with a mix of horror and amusement at the Quartermaine legacy of dramatic showdowns. This feud not only disrupts the gathering but hints at deeper animosities rooted in Tracy's protective instincts over ELQ assets, which Ronnie once eyed covetously through shady alliances, leaving the mansion's air thick with unresolved grudges that promise more fireworks in the days ahead. Next, we will learn about the shocking revelation surrounding Caesar Faison's enigmatic collaborator, the one Jack Brennan has been desperately hunting down. In the twisting web of Port Charles intrigue, the veil is finally lifting on the shadowy figure tied to Caesar Faison, the infamous criminal mastermind whose legacy continues to haunt the town. Jack Brennan, locked in his own battles, pressed Valentine Cassadine for answers, only to hit a wall of evasion or genuine ignorance. But as the pieces fall into place, it becomes abundantly clear that the sole surviving confidant from Faison's inner circle is none other than Jerry Jax, the rogue operative whose return could ignite a powder keg of danger. This disclosure isn't just a plot twist, it's a seismic shift that reconnects long-buried alliances and threatens to upend lives across the canvas. Imagine the chaos if Jerry's involvement resurfaces, pulling in unwitting family members and forcing heroes to confront ghosts they thought exorcised. As fans dissect this bombshell, the implications ripple far beyond a simple partnership, hinting at experiments, betrayals, and a potential invasion of Port Charles by one of its most notorious villains. Caesar Faison was a man of unparalleled paranoia, building an empire on deception where true loyalty was rarer than an honest confession in a courtroom. Throughout his nefarious career, he surrounded himself with disposable pawns, but genuine trust? That was reserved for a select few, and even then, it came laced with suspicion. Take his strained dynamic with his eldest son, Heinrich Faison, better known to us as Peter August. Faison viewed Peter not as an heir but as a liability, culminating in that fateful confrontation where he fired upon him in a fit of rage. Tragically, the bullet found its mark elsewhere, striking his younger son, Nathan West, and plunging him into a decade-long presumed death that shattered families and fueled endless grief. Nathan's miraculous revival and integration into Port Charles society only amplified the scars left by his father's cruelty, turning what should have been a homecoming into a minefield of emotional reckonings. Yet, this incident underscores Faison's selective bonds. He wouldn't have hesitated to eliminate even blood if it served his agenda. Diving deeper, one can't ignore how Faison's distrust extended to his scientific endeavors, where partners were often coerced collaborators rather than willing allies. He thrived on control, manipulating outcomes from the shadows, and this pattern of isolation made any true partnership a monumental event. If Jerry Jax fits this rare mold, it explains why their collaboration endured, blending Jerry's ruthless pragmatism with Faison's visionary madness to forge weapons of unparalleled devastation. Valentine Cassadine, ever the enigmatic figure with his finger on the pulse of Port Charles's underbelly, dropped a tantalizing hint to Jack Brennan about Faison's trusted associate, but stopped short of naming names. Whether out of calculated secrecy or honest unawareness remains a tantalizing puzzle for viewers. With heavyweights like Helena Cassadine and Luke Spencer long departed from this world, the field narrows dramatically to Jerry Jax as the last man standing from that era of high-stakes villainy. Valentine's reluctance to spill the beans could stem from a web of personal stakes. After all, Jerry is the uncle of Jocelyn Jax, the young woman whose life has been a whirlwind of peril and resilience. Picture Valentine weighing the fallout, revealing Jerry might not only endanger Jocelyn but also expose his own network of informants feeding him intel straight from the bowels of Steinmauer prison. This prison whisperer dynamic adds layers to Valentine's character, portraying him as a chess master anticipating moves far ahead. He might even possess classified knowledge about Jocelyn's covert recruitment into the intelligence world, a detail that could make Jerry's exposure a direct threat to her safety. As the story unfolds, Valentine's silence invites speculation. Is he protecting an asset, or shielding a darker agenda? His connections in Port Charles run deep, from shadowy dealings with the Cassadine legacy to alliances forged in secrecy, suggesting that any information he withholds is deliberate and dripping with consequence. This opacity heightens the drama, turning every conversation into a high-wire act of half-truths and hidden motives. Jerry Jax, for all his globetrotting exploits and moral ambiguity, may lack the academic polish of a cold fusion expert like the late Professor Henry Dalton, yet his hands-on expertise in clandestine laboratories is nothing short of legendary. He's no stranger to the alchemy of destruction, having orchestrated some of the most audacious schemes in Port Charles history. Fans will vividly recall the nightmare he unleashed years ago, when he laced the city's water supply with a lethal toxin, holding an entire community ransom in a bid for power and profit. This wasn't mere terrorism, it was a calculated demonstration of his biochemical prowess, blending science with sadism to bend the town to his will. Extending this thread, Jerry's villainy touched the Jax family intimately when he orchestrated the kidnapping of a young Jocelyn, injecting her with an experimental serum whose long-term effects still loom like a dark cloud over her future. Her father, Jasper Jax, faced the barrel of Jerry's gun in a tense standoff that exposed the fractures within their bloodline, turning familial ties into ticking time bombs. Jerry's collaborative history further cements his role as Faison's ideal counterpart. He once teamed up with the diabolical duo of Faison and Liesl Albrecht, masterminding the staged explosion that killed Robin Scorpio Drake and held her captive in a fortified facility. This operation wasn't just about elimination, it involved cutting-edge simulations and survival protocols that blurred the line between death and deception. Fast forward to his dramatic escape from Steinmauer around 2019, and Jerry emerges as a phantom who refuses to fade, now potentially resurfacing to continue Faison's unfinished symphony of chaos. Inventing a new angle, suppose Jerry has been quietly amassing resources in hidden enclaves, refining toxins into designer plagues tailored to exploit Port Charles's vulnerabilities. His escape wasn't random, it was the prelude to a larger resurgence, where old grudges fuel innovative atrocities. At the heart of this resurgence lies the specter of Britt Westbourne, whose entanglement in these shadows paints her as both victim and vector in a larger conspiracy. While Jerry might not boast a PhD in fusion physics, his laboratory acumen rivals that of any mad scientist, positioning him as the shadowy overseer Britt fears with every fiber of her being. See, the cryptic alias echoing through the plot, could very well mask Jerry's identity, a nod to his chameleon-like ability to reinvent himself amid global pursuits. Britt's tenure in that remote Croatian lab wasn't voluntary, she was thrust into a pressure cooker of unethical trials, possibly serving as the first test subject in projects aimed at weaponizing cures. Envision this: Jerry, leveraging his toxin expertise, engineers a breakthrough against Huntington's disease, not as salvation, but as leverage. He could dangle the antidote like a carrot, extorting afflicted families or holding the town hostage once more, this time with hope twisted into horror. Britt's terror isn't abstract, it's visceral, rooted in the knowledge that her boss's arrival in Port Charles would unleash a storm of retribution for any perceived disloyalty. Her mother, Liesl Albrecht, once Faison's flame and collaborator, ties Britt directly to this legacy, suggesting she inherited not just genes but a curse of proximity to evil. Adding inventive depth, perhaps Britt uncovered fragments of Jerry's master plan during her captivity, blueprints for a Huntington serum laced with a dormant trigger, designed to activate and devastate unless demands are met. This revelation positions her as a reluctant whistleblower, her every step shadowed by the fear that Jerry's reach extends further than she imagined, infiltrating even the WSB's ranks. Finally, the threads of this conspiracy weave back to Nathan West, whose resurrection already defied the odds, but now hints at a more sinister origin story. As Faison's overlooked progeny, Nathan might have been more than collateral damage. He could have been an unwitting participant in one of his father's clandestine experiments, a prototype for resilience serums or neural enhancements gone awry. Jerry, stepping into the void left by Faison's demise, would have eagerly assumed stewardship of such initiatives, repurposing Nathan's miraculous survival as data for his own arsenal. This theory adds poignant irony. Nathan, now a pillar of Port Charles law enforcement, carries the unwitting legacy of his father's atrocities in his veins. If Jerry's return exposes this, it could fracture Nathan's hard-won peace, forcing him to confront not just family betrayal but the possibility that his second chance at life was engineered in a lab of horrors. Britt's plight mirrors his, both ensnared in the same web, their fears converging on the inevitable, Jerry's shadow looming over the horizon, ready to drag Port Charles into another era of terror. As this storyline accelerates, the stakes couldn't be higher, blending personal vendettas with global threats in a tapestry of suspense that keeps us all on the edge of our seats.